Welcome to Halfway Dark.
The delivery that waited. It was a quiet Thursday night when the first box arrived. I worked the night shift at a small warehouse, usually alone, except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional beeping of scanners. This box was different. It had no label, no name, no tracking number. Just plain brown cardboard, taped tight and waiting at the loading dock. I hesitated. The warehouse receives hundreds of deliveries a day, but I never handled packages like this. Curiosity overpowered caution. I wheeled it inside, listening to the echo of my footsteps. The box seemed heavier than it looked, almost like it resisted being moved. The first strange thing happened when I placed it on the counter. The temperature dropped. My breath fogged in front of me. I could see the faint outline of my own reflection on the box, though the surface was matte. It shouldn't have reflected anything. I tried to ignore it. Unpackaging was routine, after all. I tore at the tape and lifted the lid. Inside was a smaller black box, the kind you'd see in a jewelry store. It didn't belong in a warehouse. I set it down and took a step back. Then I heard it. A whisper. Soft, almost inaudible. "Don't leave." I froze. The warehouse is empty at this hour. The humming lights above me felt oppressive. Too bright, too loud. I blinked and shook my head. I must be tired. I've been working nights for years. I opened the black box carefully. Inside was a single envelope. No return address, just my name scrawled neatly across the front. Inside the envelope was a photograph. The photograph was taken inside the warehouse. Me, standing there, looking at the box. I hadn't taken that photo. No one else was here. A chill ran down my spine. I set the photograph aside and examined the box again. The whisper came again, closer this time, urgent. "Open it." I wanted to leave, but my legs refused. Some instinct kept me rooted. The black box seemed to pulse faintly, like a heartbeat. I tore the envelope open further. There was a small key inside, black metal, cold to the touch. No explanation, no note, no instructions. Just the key. The warehouse door clicked. Not the main entrance. I had locked that. Another door, the storage closet at the far end of the room. It shouldn't have moved. The whisper grew louder. "Use it." I backed away. I considered leaving, calling someone, anything, but my phone was dead. The key in my hand felt heavier than it should, as if it had a weight beyond metal. I forced myself toward the storage closet. The key slid into the lock easily. I turned it, half expecting the door to remain shut. It opened with a soft creak. Darkness inside swallowed the light from the warehouse. I stepped in. The air was colder here. Dust hung in suspended swirls. And then I saw them. Rows of boxes stacked neatly, each one exactly like the black box I carried. Hundreds of them, lined up perfectly, waiting. A shadow moved. It wasn't human. Too tall, too thin, stretching across the boxes with impossible angles. It didn't walk. It slid, gliding across the floor silently. I could feel it watching me. The whisper was everywhere now, surrounding me, inside me. "Stay. Open more." I tried to turn, to leave, but the shadow blocked the way. Every path I took led back to the boxes. Every box looked identical, black, polished, perfect. Some pulsed faintly like the first one. I opened a second box. Inside, a photograph again. This time of me, standing here, inside the storage closet, staring at the black boxes. My own reflection caught in the camera, eyes wide. I hadn't taken this. The whisper grew louder, overlapping itself. "Open it. Open it. Open it." I panicked. I wanted to run, but my feet felt rooted. Every step toward the exit turned back toward the boxes. I could feel something breathing, something alive, moving just beyond my vision. I opened another box. The photograph inside showed me from behind now, a shadowy figure standing over my shoulder. I spun around. No one was there. Only the faint pulse of the boxes, and the whisper now turning into voices. You belong here. Open them all. Time blurred. The lights flickered. I lost track of how many boxes I opened. Each one held photographs, keys, small objects I couldn't identify. Every object made the shadow grow taller, denser, closer. I could feel it pressing against me, cold and heavy. The warehouse doors opened on their own. A breeze swept through, carrying the faint scent of metal and dust. I wanted to leave. Every instinct screamed at me to escape. I ran toward the exit. When I looked back, the storage closet was gone. The rows of black boxes vanished. Only the first box remained on the counter. My heart pounded. I grabbed it and ran out into the empty parking lot. I placed the box in my car. Every time I looked in the rearview mirror, I swore the shadow lingered just inside the warehouse doors, waiting, patient. I drove home, locked my apartment door, and tried to forget the night. But I couldn't. Every sound, every shadow in my apartment reminded me of the black boxes, the photographs, the whispering voices. That box sits on my kitchen counter now. I haven't opened it again. I don't plan to. But sometimes, when the lights flicker, I hear it. A soft whisper. Open it. Open it. And I know, deep down, that it won't stop coming until I do. I'm not sure how to start this. I don't know if anyone will even see this, but I have to get it out. I have to tell someone what happened. Today, something came out of the horror box. I didn't expect it. Not like this. Not ever. My roommate, Jake. He was joking around when he first touched it, but by the end of the night, he was gone. And I still can't explain how it happened. The day started normally. I came home from work, tossed my keys on the counter, and there it was. The box. Small, black, its hinge clicking quietly, almost like a heartbeat. My roommate, Jake, he laughed when he noticed it. "Did you order something weird again?" he asked, nudging the box with his foot. I just shook my head. We had agreed no more weird online deliveries. And yet, there it was, sitting on our floor, waiting. We looked it over. No shipping label, no return address. Nothing inside matched anything we recognized, not even the handwriting on the note tucked inside. I felt it first when the box moved slightly, just a tiny shift. Not from the floor, not from me touching it. It just moved. Jake didn't notice, or maybe he didn't care. He reached in, pulling out a small folded piece of paper with his name scrawled across it. "You left the door open," it read. Jake just laughed it off. I froze. The apartment doors were all locked. I knew they were. The mailbox hadn't been opened all day. He shrugged and tossed the note aside, but as he turned away, I swear I saw a shadow flicker behind him, as if someone had been standing right there, watching. Later that evening, after Jake had gone to his room, I went back to the box. Something was different. A faint whisper seemed to echo from inside it. I leaned closer, trying to catch the words. It sounded like Jake's voice. No, more like someone pretending to be him. I felt a chill run down my spine and slammed the lid shut. That night, we tried to ignore it. We made dinner, watched TV, laughed about nothing important. We tried to pretend everything was normal, but the box just sat there, silent, almost, patient, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching us. I swore it pulsed slightly, like a faint, dark heartbeat, every time Jake walked past it. I didn't say anything. I didn't want him to think I was crazy. By midnight, the whispers grew clearer. I was sitting on the couch, alone, just listening. "Why did you leave it open?" A voice said softly, coming from the box. My blood ran cold. That wasn't Jake, because Jake wasn't home. Or wait, I jumped up and checked his bedroom. He was right there, fast asleep. I closed his door, my heart pounding in my chest. What was happening? The next morning, things got stranger. I found Jake's phone on the kitchen counter, his coffee sitting beside it, cold. I walked into the living room and froze. The box had shifted again. The lid was slightly ajar, even though I knew I had closed it. I reached out to touch it, hesitating. And then I noticed something under the couch. A tiny shoe. Not mine. Not something we owned. It was Jake's sneaker. Only he was nowhere to be found. I called his name. Nothing. I started to panic. I called his phone. It went straight to voicemail. I ran through the apartment, checking every room, every closet, my calls growing more frantic. And there it was again, the box, pulsing slightly on the floor, whispering, almost breathing. I remembered the note. You left the door open. My mind raced. What door? The front door was locked. The windows were shut. I couldn't explain it. I shouldn't have touched it. We shouldn't have brought it inside. Hours passed. I called our neighbors. No one saw him leave. None of his friends had heard from him. I sat on the floor beside the box, my hands trembling, just listening. The whisper came again, clearer this time. He's inside. I wanted to scream, but my voice was caught in my throat. I stared at the box, willing it to tell me what had happened. And then I saw it, a small hidden compartment on the side I hadn't noticed before. My fingers shook as I slid it open. Inside, I found a tiny, perfect replica of our apartment. Every piece of furniture was there, in miniature. And on the tiny couch was a tiny figure that looked exactly like Jake. But it was. Still, I reached out a trembling finger and touched it. The tiny figure's head turned slowly, its painted eyes seeming to look right at me, aware that I was watching. A muffled sound escaped from the box, a distorted, tiny scream. My knees buckled. I realized then he wasn't gone. He was trapped. I tried shaking the box, throwing it against the wall, but it wouldn't budge. It felt like it was bolted to the floor. The whispering grew louder, more insistent. You shouldn't have opened it. It hissed, the voice seeming to come from all around me now. I dropped to the floor, shaking, staring at the miniature Jake, who was no longer still. He was waving at me, a tiny, desperate gesture, pleading silently. I backed away, scrambling across the floor to get away from it. The box's lid slammed shut on its own, with a crack so loud it echoed through the apartment. And then, silence. A silence so heavy, it felt like the walls themselves were pressing in on me. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I just sat there, watching the box, waiting. Morning came, and with it, a new package sitting beside the horror box. It was a tiny door, the kind you'd see on a dollhouse, with a small, empty space inside where a figure should be. I didn't need to open it to know what it meant. The horror was far from over. I know that tomorrow, something else will come from the horror box, and it won't just be shadows or whispers anymore. I don't know if I'm ready to see it. Thank you for listening. If you've ever seen anything like this, please let me know. Make sure you follow, because I'm going to document everything that happens next. Wish me luck. I think I'm going to need it. The neighbor who watches. I moved into the apartment complex expecting silence, privacy, a blank slate. At first, nothing seemed unusual. The building was quiet at night, the occasional hum of the old heater. But soon, I noticed shadows moving across my walls when no lights were on. It started subtly, a flicker in the corner of my eye, always when I was alone. I thought it was fatigue, the result of late nights at work, until the shadows began to form patterns, like someone pacing just beyond the edge of perception. One morning, I found a note slipped under my door. No handwriting, just sharp, precise letters cut from a magazine glued onto paper. It read, "Do not forget I see you." My stomach turned. I didn't know anyone in the building. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a prank from a neighbor, a harmless joke. But the note matched the shadows perfectly. They didn't just move, they lingered. Every corner of the apartment seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at it. The first night, I left my lights on, curtains drawn. Around 11 p.m., I heard faint tapping against my window. At first, I thought it was branches brushing outside, until the tapping became deliberate. 3 sharp knocks spaced evenly, then silence. I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with my phone flashlight, scanning every shadow, every reflection. The knocking returned at 1:03 a.m., then 1:33, then 1:47. The intervals weren't random. Someone was keeping track, timing me. By the third night, I started seeing movement in the hallway outside my door. At first, it was a flicker under the peephole, then a tall figure, thin, standing still for hours. I called the building manager. He said he'd check security cameras. The next day, I asked to see footage. He hesitated. Finally, he said the hallway cameras weren't recording. I asked about other apartments. He said they were empty. I didn't believe him. Something was inside, waiting, watching, planning. I began locking every door, even the utility closet. I drew the blinds, taped windows, but the feeling persisted. Each night, shadows grew sharper, more defined. I could hear faint scratching along the walls, soft at first, then louder, closer, deliberate. It wasn't until I woke to a whisper in the dark that I realized the presence was not content to remain unseen. My name was spoken, long and low, carrying a weight that seemed to vibrate through my bones. I had not said it aloud. I called the police. They came and found nothing. No signs of entry, no footprints, no forced locks, no evidence of trespassing. Only the same fear that had taken root in me, growing stronger, impossible to shake. The shadow began to appear in reflections mirrors, windows, even the glass of my microwave. Every reflective surface became a portal through which I was observed. The outline of a tall figure pressed against the back of the room, lingering at the edges. Notes continued to arrive. They were always precise, each letter clipped from magazines, each message direct. I am here. Do not ignore. Look closer. I began sleeping in shifts, never more than 2 hours at a time, fearing the watching eyes would catch me unaware. One night, I decided to confront it. I opened the door slightly, peering down the hall. The figure was there, perfectly still, impossibly tall, with limbs too long to be human. It didn't move when I approached, didn't react, but I felt its attention, heavy and suffocating. I ran back into my apartment, slamming the door, shoving a chair under the handle. My heart raced, but the feeling did not diminish. Something had entered my space, or had always been here. The building, the walls, the floor, they all seemed to breathe, alive with its presence. I left a recorder on, hoping to capture proof. The next morning, I listened. Hours of silence, then my own voice whispering my name repeatedly. Beneath it, faint scratching, faint footsteps pacing across the floor. Someone had moved inside while I slept. Every attempt to leave was met with subtle interference. Elevators stopped, doors jammed, shadows appeared on stairwell cameras that shouldn't exist. Even my car seemed followed, though the streets were empty, headlights casting nothing but darkness around me. I started avoiding the window. The blinds were drawn tight, reflective surfaces covered, mirrors removed. But no matter what I did, the feeling persisted, a weight pressing against my consciousness, reminding me I was not alone, had never been alone. One night, I awoke to the sound of my own breathing echoed back at me. At first, I thought I had dreamt it, but then I heard faint whispers of my movements, as if someone were narrating my every action in real time, soft, deliberate, mocking. The last straw came when a package arrived. No label, no sender. Inside was a small black box with a note. Do not open until you accept I see everything. I left it untouched, but curiosity gnawed at me. I feared the act of observation would bind me closer. I started recording every night, every movement, every sound. Playback revealed impossible things. Doors moving slightly, shadows stretching across rooms, whispers I had never spoken, reflections in corners where no light existed. The entity cataloged me, studied me, learned me. I moved apartments twice. Each new place felt safer, but at exactly 1:47 a.m., every night without fail, the scratches returned. The knocks sounded against walls or ceilings, and the same low voice whispered my name. Distance mattered nothing. I finally realized the only safety was in acknowledging it, not resisting. I speak softly now when it approaches, naming the presence aloud, hoping submission can protect me, hoping that recognition will satisfy whatever force watches from the edges. Even now, I write this in dim light, counting the seconds until the hour passes, until the scraping begins again. I know it is near, patient, waiting for the moment I lapse, the moment I forget, the moment I breathe too loudly. If you ever hear deliberate knocks, scratching at night, or glimpses of shadows in your apartment, remember to be cautious. Open the horror box carefully, and if you want to see what's hidden in the dark, subscribe before curiosity finds you first. The man in apartment 3B. I first noticed the man in 3B on a Tuesday night, though nothing about him was visible at first. I only heard the scratching, steady and deliberate, like metal dragged slowly across wood, echoing through the walls in perfect rhythm. It started at exactly 1:47 a.m., a time that would haunt every night after. I tried to ignore it at first, telling myself old buildings creak and settle, that pipes make strange sounds, that my imagination was overworking in the darkness when I was alone. By the third night, the sound became unbearable. I pressed my ear against the wall, and the scratching stopped immediately. A sharp knock followed, 3 beats spaced perfectly. I stumbled back, heart racing, but the knocks repeated again, faster, more insistent. I convinced myself to sleep through it, but the patterns haunted me. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined long, thin fingers scraping against plaster, reaching through the walls, trying to trace my movements and catch me awake in my bed. One morning, I noticed a crooked handwritten sign on his door. Do not enter. Do not listen. My first thought was a prank, but the careful scrawling and uneven paper suggested intent. Someone wanted to warn or scare, or both. At work the next day, I tried to tell someone about it. My coworker Dana laughed, joking about neighbors, artists, or psychotic tenants. But I knew it wasn't a joke. I could feel the pattern in my chest, the inevitability of whatever was in 3B waiting to act. That night, I left all lights off and waited in my apartment, counting the minutes until 1:47 a.m. The scratching started, louder this time, resonating through the walls as if the building itself had become a vessel for it. I could feel it behind my headboard. I moved the bed to the other side of the room. The sound shifted with me. Every step I took was mirrored by the rhythm, closer, heavier. I couldn't escape it, couldn't outpace it, and I understood for the first time that this was not a human neighbor. I called the building manager in the morning. He barely looked up, dismissing my claims. 3B has been vacant for months, he said. Probably rats or old pipes. Nothing to worry about. Rats don't knock in patterns. Rats don't follow you. I left shaking. That night, I waited again, determined. 1:47 arrived. The scratching began. I stepped into the hallway, and the overhead light flickered. From 3B came faint, deliberate breathing. The door was cracked open a fraction, almost inviting me in, almost daring me to see. Curiosity overcame fear. I pushed the door wider. Darkness swallowed the hallway inside, thick and oppressive. The air was stale and metallic, carrying a subtle stench of iron and rot that made my stomach turn. I realized the apartment had been left untouched for months, yet something lived within it. Every footstep echoed against the floor, stirring dust motes into swirling clouds in the flashlight beam. Sheets covered furniture, hiding shapes beneath, but the corner of the room drew my attention. A figure, unnaturally tall and thin, emerged from the darkness, shadowed and wrong in proportion. I stumbled backward, tripping over something soft. A mattress lay torn apart on the floor, its stuffing replaced with photographs, hundreds of them. Each one showed me in moments. I did not remember being captured, intimate and exposed, through windows and doors that I had believed were private. My phone's light flickered and died. The shadow did not move, but I could feel it watching me, pressing against me from beyond sight. I fled, slamming the door behind me, my chest heaving, leaving the darkness intact and alive inside 3B. I ran to my apartment, locking every bolt, barricading the windows. I stayed awake all night with a kitchen knife, staring into the shadows, listening. When I finally dared to glance at the clock, it was 1:57. The scratching had followed me, echoing through the walls of my own apartment. I fled the building the next morning, staying with friends, moving across town. I believed distance would help, that the pattern would not reach me here. But at 1:47 a.m., the rhythm began again. Scrape, scrape, scrape. 3 deliberate knocks followed. My pulse spiked with recognition and dread. Every attempt to record the sounds failed to reassure me. I set my phone to capture overnight audio, but when I listened the next morning, the first 6 hours were silent. Exactly at 1:47, the scratching returned, faint but distinct, layered beneath it a whisper of my own voice. "I told you not to listen." It breathed from the recording, soft but clear. Then footsteps, slow and deliberate, approached the device, echoing faintly in a space that should have been empty. The presence had followed me, across streets, across walls, into the rooms where I sought safety. The building manager later told me 3B had been boarded up after a supposed break-in. He would not elaborate, and his hands trembled when he mentioned it. I packed my apartment, leaving everything behind, convinced that my belongings might carry some trace of the entity with them. I tried to settle somewhere new, in a building with no shared walls, no neighbors above or below. But the pattern persisted. I never saw the figure fully, only glimpses of shadow in the corner, a reflection where none should exist, a scraping sound at precise intervals. Packages began arriving, unmarked, untraceable. One contained a tape recorder. Pressing play revealed my own voice, whispering, "Do not listen." Beneath that, the faint, deliberate scraping, followed by 3 knocks, spaced exactly as before, echoing across my new apartment. Sleep became impossible. Every night I counted the minutes to 1:47, heart racing in anticipation of the inevitable. My own reflection seemed altered in mirrors, shadows stretching longer than my body, moving against the light, watching, waiting, silent and patient. I realized the entity did not merely inhabit space. It inhabited perception. Wherever I looked, it lingered, a presence just beyond comprehension, just beyond visibility. The photographs, the packages, the whispers, they were all evidence of its persistence, of its reach into the life I had thought secure. Even in daylight, I felt the weight of observation. I avoided windows, shrouded mirrors, and any reflective surfaces. The sound did not come in the light, but I could sense it, coiled and patient, like a predator waiting for the night to fall, the ritual to begin again. One night, I recorded myself narrating a story, trying to distract the entity. My voice echoed in the room, filling the space, but when I listened back, the recording was layered with scratching, whispers, and faint footsteps, not my own. It was mimicking, adapting, evolving. I have learned that the entity is not bound to any single apartment. It is drawn to attention, to recognition, to the act of noticing. Each night I fear it will follow me again, no matter where I go, creeping into walls, ceilings, and reflections, seeking acknowledgement. The scratching is now a warning as much as a signal. 3 knocks, spaced precisely, insist upon recognition. I no longer try to record or flee. I wait, quietly, counting the seconds, aware that any movement invites notice, and the entity rewards curiosity with presence. Sometimes I hear it in dreams, whispering my name, scraping, knocking, as if the distance between sleep and waking matters little. Even in unconsciousness, I am observed, catalogued, and remembered. My own fear becomes the conduit for its persistence. The last thing I remember before I finally closed my eyes one night was the soft metallic scrape, followed by 3 slow knocks, and the unmistakable awareness that it was directly behind me, waiting, patient, and inevitable. I sit here writing this now, every light on, windows shut, doors locked, knowing the pattern is imminent. At 1:47, the sound will return, the knocks will follow, and I will hear whispers of my own voice repeating, reminding me that it is still here, and it always will be. If you hear something in the night, a scrape or a knock, a shadow that shouldn't be, you may be closer to the horror box than you think. Open the box carefully, and remember to subscribe, so you can witness what waits in the dark before it finds you. The package that shouldn't exist. I returned home one Friday night to find a small, unmarked package sitting on my doorstep. There was no note, no indication of who it was from, only the subtle hum of the city fading behind me as I stared at its plain brown cardboard. At first, I thought it was a delivery mistake, maybe a neighbor's order left in my care. But the tape sealing the box was slick, industrial grade, unlike anything I had used. I considered leaving it outside, but a strange compulsion urged me to pick it up. Inside, wrapped in plain white tissue, was a small black cube, smooth, cold, unassuming. I turned it in my hands, noticing that it made no sound, reflected no light, yet felt impossibly heavy. A faint vibration hummed through my fingertips as I considered its presence. That night, I left it on the kitchen counter. Sleep didn't come. I kept imagining the cube moving slightly when I wasn't looking, like it had awareness, like it watched me in the dark. Shadows in the room began to twist subtly, drawn toward it. I tried to ignore it, focusing on mundane routines, dishes, laundry, emails. But the feeling of being observed intensified. Every reflection, every glass surface seemed to hold a faint silhouette leaning closer, waiting for me to notice. Curiosity felt dangerous, yet irresistible. At 1:12 a.m., the first sound came. A soft scratching, faint but deliberate, emanating from the cube itself. My heart raced. I picked it up. The vibration grew stronger. I dropped it, and it landed upright, edges perfectly aligned, unshaken, as if mocking me. The next morning, I discovered faint markings along the edges of the cube, almost imperceptible. They resembled letters, numbers, symbols I could not comprehend. I photographed them, zoomed in, traced them with my fingers. They seemed to shift slightly when I blinked or looked away. That night, I placed a recorder beside the cube, hoping for proof of something tangible, something explainable. When I played it back the next morning, my own voice was there, whispering, soft and fragmented. Do not open, do not touch, do not listen. The cube began appearing in my dreams. I woke to the hum in the room, waking images of hands reaching toward it from impossible angles. Sleep became shallow, fragmented, each moment haunted by the vibration, by the soft whispers that carried no words, but a weight I understood instinctively. I tried to get rid of it. I placed it in a bag, carried it to the dumpster outside, watched it lie among garbage. I returned hours later. The cube sat on my counter, exactly where I had left it. No footprints, no sign of movement, yet impossibly, it had returned. Even the lights seemed altered when it was near. Shadows bent strangely. Reflections became inconsistent. My phone screen occasionally displayed faint silhouettes behind me, flickering in static moments. The cube's presence made everything around it subtly wrong, unreal, yet perfectly aligned. One night, I dared to ask aloud what it wanted. The room was silent, still, yet the vibration increased. A faint scratching traced along my arms, as though unseen hands were holding me, pressing me toward attention, toward acknowledgement, toward something I could not yet comprehend. A neighbor came by the next day, unexpected. They knocked, polite, smiling. I invited them in. The moment they entered, they froze, eyes wide, staring at nothing. They whispered, "I know what you have. Don't keep it here." Before I could respond, they were gone. No car, no footsteps, nothing. I started sleeping with a knife on my pillow, placing the cube in a small cardboard box in the center of the room. Even then, it vibrated gently, like a heartbeat, counting down, keeping time, marking me in some way. I realized it did not want to be destroyed. It wanted recognition. One evening, I recorded myself explaining the cube, hoping to capture proof. The playback revealed impossible footage. The cube in different positions than I remembered, markings shifting, my voice fragmented and overlaid with whispers I had never spoken. It was then I noticed the subtle patterns. Small movements in the cube seemed to correspond with events in my life, choices I made, even thoughts I had not spoken aloud. The cube was a record, a tracker, a silent observer cataloging me with precision. The first faint knock came the night after that realization. 3 slow knocks against the walls, spaced 5 seconds apart. I froze. I had not heard anyone, yet the pattern was deliberate, impossible, echoing the rhythm of my heartbeat, marking me, warning me. The next morning, I opened my laptop. On the desktop appeared a file I had not created, a video, muted, showing my apartment empty, yet moving shadows danced along the walls. The cube sat center frame. It had recorded what I could not see, what I could not yet understand. I considered leaving it outside, far away from home. I walked several blocks with it, intending to discard it in a park, in a ditch, anywhere. Hours later, I returned. The cube was sitting on my counter, humming gently, mocking every effort to remove it from my life. Sleep became impossible. Every night at 1:47 a.m., a soft vibration echoed through the cube. Scratches along its sides, whispers and voices that mimicked my own. I learned not to approach it, not to speak to it directly, yet I could not ignore it, could not escape it. I began leaving my phone recording each night. Playbacks revealed a steady progression, the cube subtly moving closer to me, reflections showing impossible angles, shadows stretching across the room. It cataloged me, studied me, anticipated my movements, learning my habits with frightening accuracy. Packages started arriving, unmarked, identical, each containing small black cubes, each humming, each vibrating gently. I dared not open them. The first had come as a warning. Now they multiplied, each one an extension of awareness, a network, a presence beyond comprehension. I realized the cube wanted me to notice, to observe, to acknowledge. My fear was part of its function. Resistance only drew attention. Acceptance, even passive acknowledgement, was the only way to exist without provocation, though it was not protection, only delay. At 1:47 a.m. last night, the cube vibrated violently, scraping against the table. A whisper echoed clearly in my ears. Do not leave, do not ignore, do not forget. My pulse spiked. I shivered, knowing this message was not a suggestion. It was a command, a ritual of recognition. If you ever receive a package that seems impossible, unmarked, humming with its own life, Know that curiosity can be dangerous. Open the horror box carefully, and if you want to witness what lies waiting in the dark before it comes to you, subscribe. The cube sits now in the center of the room, vibrating softly. I do not touch it. I do not approach it. I do not speak of it aloud. The hum is constant, the whispers steady, marking time, observing me. The package was never just a delivery. It is a presence, patient, eternal, and watching. Even as I write this, I feel its subtle vibration under the table, a pulse syncing with my own heartbeat. Every shadow stretches toward it. Every reflection captures a fraction of its awareness. I understand now. I am catalogued, measured, recognized, and its attention will not waver. I have learned that every time you feel watched in a place that should be safe, every flicker of shadow, every faint, inexplicable noise, you are closer to the horror box than you realize. Open carefully, and if you dare, subscribe to witness what waits in the dark.